Welcome, Benzinga Nation, and we are so excited to have you to dig deeper into the mining industry outlook because there's so many different ways to attack the mining world. You can have a crack at it when it comes to the stock market. You can have a chance to go ahead and own something in terms of gold bars, and we've got great guests lined up to get you a little bit more insight on how to go ahead and invest your hard-earned money. We're going to start things off with a recorded conversation that I had with Tim McCutcheon, who is an advisory board member at Wealth Minerals. Had some great things to say. Here's the conversation. We're going to talk to Tim McCutcheon, who is an advisory board member for Wealth Minerals. Tim, welcome to the show. How's it going, Tim? Good morning.
It's going well. Good morning to you. Yes.
You know, when it comes to minerals, there's so many different ways to kind of attack the market. There's so many different opportunities. So I'm excited to kind of dive deep into it. But for the folks at home that might not be familiar with Wealth Minerals, give us an idea of what is it that you guys do. But also, I want to know the strategic vision for the next 5 years and how you plan on kind of positioning the company within the ever-evolving lithium market space and the energy transition movement that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key thing. What's happening in the world right now, of course, is this energy transition about how we use and consume energy or electricity in a more sort of concrete way. And the shift is to use large power plants to generate electricity that then gets distributed to essentially battery packs that are energy storage units that can then be used for all sorts of applications, whether it's your weed whacker, your car, train, airplane, whatever it happens to be, to move away from internal combustion engines, which are essentially power generators for every single item that you need power on. So a key part of that is lithium ion battery packs, and you can't have lithium ion batteries without lithium. And so what Wealth Minerals is really tapping into is this shift in the way we use and consume energy globally, and picking this one discrete sort of weak spot in that whole picture, which is the supply of lithium. Lithium only comes from a few places in the world in sort of measurable quantities. It's Australia, Chile, Argentina, and then a few places in West Africa. And that's pretty much it. There's a few others, but in general, that's where it all comes from. And so a Wealth Minerals sort of vision, if you will, comes in is, how can we position the company to be in a jurisdiction where we're pretty comfortable that, you know, we're going to wake up every morning and not be surprised. That also has a rich endowment of lithium assets to exploit and develop. And so that's what we have with these two assets in Chile. One's called Ayagüe to the north, and one's called Atacama a little bit further south. Ayagüe is a smaller size asset, but it is more studied. We've done a lot more work on it, and it is closer to a scenario where it could be financed and put into production. And Atacama is an earlier stage project, but really has this potential to be a real world-class game changer in terms of lithium supply. But this is the case, as you know, if you followed for the entire battery metal space. And I think that the problem as an investor is, how do I get exposure? I have an idea, but what do I actually do to ride this? And what Wealth Minerals gives investors is exposure to really fantastic assets in a jurisdiction where you're not going to get surprised, which in our business is a very good thing.
You mentioned a lot of the assets. So give me a bit of a deeper dive and what kind of excites you the most about the project's potential.
So we have a project called Ayagüe, which is in the northern part of Chile, right on the Bolivian border. And it is a project that we've been able to do the most work on. So it's been drilled out. We have a resource. We have an economic assessment on it, which essentially is an engineering / geological study that gives a third party a sense of what this project can be in a pretty specific way. And what that is a project that would produce 20,000 tons of basically lithium. The lithium carbonate equivalent is the unit we use, 20,000 tons of that stuff every year for decades, and be able to sustain that production level for many, many years, with a very profitable cost profile, with a capex of around 750 million, and with a net present value, even at a 10% discount rate, of over 1.1 billion after tax. So with a very high sort of a risk factor baked into the calculations, you have a project that's worth an enormous amount of money that could be a sizable asset in the lithium space. And for context, most of the projects in Argentina that you mentioned, before in part of the question, they're producing around 20,000 tons a year. So when you think of sort of these headline projects that you may have read about in the press, they're all about that size because frankly, there aren't a lot of assets in Chile that can support more than that production per year.
Yeah.
And so Ayagüe is a similar geological unit, if you will, as to what you would see in Argentina. And we've done a lot of the paperwork and we've done a lot of the physical field work to get to the point where we can point at that and say, our thing is very similar to what's on the other side of the border. Those things are worth hundreds of millions of dollars more than where Wealth Minerals is currently valued at.
Yeah.
So that's the exciting sort of real granular kind of detail of an asset that we have, and all those numbers are on our website and available for study. And then the next asset we have is Atacama, which is it's the world's largest essentially brine source of lithium in the world. In the southern part of this Atacama area, currently about 20% of global production is produced there. We have the northern part of the same geological unit. All of the geology that we've done makes it very clear that the material that they're exploiting in the southern part is the same material that we have on our part, which basically means that the project has the potential to be 10 times to 15 times larger than Ayagüe, 200 to 300,000 tons. This would be a tier 1 asset. We're talking Rio Tinto, BHP, billion dollar type asset.
Yeah.
The issue there for us is, and the challenges as a company has been, anytime, I don't care what country you're in, whether it's in the United States, Australia, Russia, Germany, Canada, anytime you have a natural resource that is that big and that influential, there's always a whole bunch of factors that come into play, unfortunately, that you have to navigate and everything else. So Wealth Minerals, we've been picking away at those things now for a while. I think we're going to be successful in navigating that, but it has taken some time. And so I encourage investors, when they look at the story, to say, okay, Ayagüe is something that I can really sort of sharpen my pencil and kind of really look at and everything else. And Atacama is this massive upside, sort of blue sky potential that we do own. It's not just arm waving. But it might take a little bit of time to really squeeze the juice out of it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. But you mentioned challenges, and I feel like the volatility in the markets is another challenge as well. So especially, I'm talking about lithium, which has had a volatile pricing environment over the past few years. What kind of makes you optimistic on the outlook for the commodity and the prospects as it relates to Wealth Minerals?
Yeah, look, we are not immune to macro trends, and the overall market is not immune to macro trends. So you're dealing with two macro issues. One is just the market goes up and down, and that's a whole function of interest rates and all sort of stuff like that. And then you have the lithium market in particular, what that is doing. So in a nutshell, if you were to describe it, is you're trying to put, when lithium is in the headlines in newspapers, you have a lot of people very interested in a very small space. So it's like trying to put a gallon of water down a straw, like within an instant. It's very hard to do. And what ends up happening is the entire space, which is not very big, sees huge volatility to the upside. And everyone thinks they're a hero because it just, climbs up crazily in a very short period of time, which is great. Except that when that interest dies off, it doesn't take a lot of selling pressure to basically have the reverse effect. And so that's what happens to the equities. And frankly, your audience can look at some of the largest lithium companies in the world, look at SQM and Albemarle and a few others. You will see that even these multi-billion-dollar companies have experienced double-digit losses and swings over the course of the past 12 months. Yeah. So it's a big deal when an $8 billion company becomes a $3 billion company. Just because of you would think the companies that big aren't that volatile, but they are in this space. Yeah. So that's something to keep in mind. And then the lithium price in general, which isn't really representative of what's going on in the overall market. That's all over the place. And a lot of that has to do with, again, it doesn't take a lot of extra inventory to kind of skew prices because it's not a very big market. But what keeps me optimistic, at the tail end of your question is lithium ion battery packs, which are from Elon Musk's Tesla to BYD cars in China and all of the little moto scooters in India and everything else, they're not going anywhere. And if anything, consumption of lithium by being used in those products is scheduled to do nothing but go up. Yeah. And the reality is it doesn't take a lot of time to study the sector to realize that the supply of lithium to feed this growth, regardless of whether it's exponential or just sort of on a lower growth path, but nonetheless going up, it doesn't really matter because the pricing issue is going to be coming on the supply side. And there frankly is a huge deficit of supply in the next 5 to 10 years.
Last thing for me, Tim, before I let you go, we've talked about the strategy of Wealth Minerals. We've talked about lithium ion. We talked about the price volatility as well. And of course, the assets that Wealth Minerals has. Was there anything else that we didn't cover that you want our viewers to know about?
Look, the lithium market in general has sort of been all over the place for the past decade. And all you got to do is look at Wealth Minerals price chart to realize that we as a team, we've gone through a lot of ups and downs in this. But what I want to convey to your audience is that the company has the cash resources to keep everything current in good standing to basically ride out the current storm. We've had these ups and downs. And the sun also rises the next day, and the sun will rise again for the lithium market and for Wealth Minerals. And we have the cash balance to make sure that we're around when that happens and to take advantage of it when it does. So I just want to make sure that that's clear to your audience that we're in pretty good shape for a junior mining company, certainly in a lot better shape than some of our peers.
Oh, awesome. I appreciate it. I look forward to more conversations as you reach these milestones. Thank you so much again for your time, Tim. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Of course, if you want to get in touch with Wealth Minerals, we've got the link in the chat for you right there. You can always reach out to them. They're great to respond to investors. So that, is something that you can utilize there as well. Alex, we're going to bring you up next. You just give me a thumbs up when you're ready to go. We've got coming up here is going to be Alex Wylie, who is the president, CEO, and director at Volt Lithium. Alex, welcome to the show.
Good to see you.
There's so many great things to talk about when it comes to mining industry, but the folks at home that might not be familiar with your company, give us a quick brief overview of what is it that you do?
Yeah, so what Volt does is we do lithium extraction from oil field brines. And so what that means is in the U.S. today, the oil and gas industry produces 22 million barrels a day of water. We're tapping into that water to do lithium extraction. So we're not building any new mines. We're not drilling any new wells or building infrastructure. We're using the water that's being produced today to extract lithium.
Now, typically when at least me or most people think of lithium production, it's kind of like the traditional mining. But in your approach, you've got the DLE, which I think is more related in the oil and gas space. Is that correct, or am I kind of off base there?
No, that's correct. So what we do is we partner with industry. So they produce water every day. They extract, they produce their oil, they produce their water. For every barrel of oil that's produced, there's about 4 barrels of water being produced in the area that we're going to start operations. So we take that water that's already being produced and we extract the lithium from that water. So it's very different from traditional mining, and it allows us to be a real low-cost operator in the industry.
So then the direct lithium extraction, it's not about the hard rock mining, right? More so about the oil field and the wastewater streams then?
That is correct. And so the time it takes for us to do our lithium extraction today is about an hour. And so that's significantly different than what you would see for a hard rock mining company or someone working with salar ponds in places like Chile. So we've developed a technology to do the lithium extraction, and we've developed a process in terms of being able to physically create that process to work in an hour.
That's pretty incredible, especially if you're able to kind of save that time there. Can you tell me about what's happening in the field work in like the West Texas area?
Yeah, so as we announced a strategic partner back in May, they made an investment into us, and we've been building our field unit out. We announced a 100-time scale up in July, so that we're battle tested and ready to go in the field. and we are shipping equipment as we speak down to the field to commence operations in Q3.
Okay, got it. So that's something that we'll look forward to an update in terms of towards the end of Q3 there. Are there specific like objectives in terms of, does this set you up for the commercial production more than people may expect?
And that's exactly what we're doing. I mean, what our goals are over the next, as we move through the end of 2024 and 2025, is we want to get our field unit up and running, producing lithium chloride, and then ultimately upgrading to either battery grade lithium carbonate or lithium hydroxide. I mean, this is an example of lithium hydroxide that we've produced, lithium carbonate that we've produced in-house, and we're going to be producing that in the field as we commence our operations.
Got it.
And our goal is to continually scale up. Our plan for initial commercial production in scale will be processing 100,000 barrels of water a day, which translates anywhere between 1,500 to 2,000 tons of lithium per year. And then we scale up from there.
What does that scalability, do you think, look like?
Well, I see over the next 3-4 years, I see us scaling up to full committed production in the 2 million to 3 million barrels a day, which would put us at 40 to 50,000 tons of lithium produced per year by our company.
Gotcha. Wow, that's quite a bit. Let's talk about the environment, because that's always a topic whenever you're drilling. Whenever, I guess, no matter what you're doing, that's always a conversation. What are the environmental upsides? How are you kind of ensuring that Mother Nature is taken a part of?
So the way the industry works today is the oil is separated from the water, and then the water is disposed safely back down a hole in reservoir. And so the industry has a fully set up system where they manage their water, they produce their water, and then they dispose of the water safely. All we do is, before the water gets disposed, we extract the lithium. So we give the water back to the producer, and then they dispose of it safely in the reservoir. So we're not doing anything from an environmental perspective. We're not drilling a single well. We're not creating any new pipelines. All we're doing is putting our equipment on surface. We effectively borrow the water for about an hour and a half, and give it back to them. So from an environmental perspective, it is just fundamentally different than anyone else.
That's pretty cool. I've never really thought about it in terms of borrowing it and being like, hey, can I give this back to you, neighbor? But that makes sense in terms of how you're doing it. So if I understand all this correctly, right, because this is something that's, interesting to me in the mining space, especially because it's not often talked about in terms of like AI and technology, but this kind of creates a new door for oil and gas mining to enter the energy transition aspect of it. Yeah.
It sure does, because effectively what is happening is this is coming from the reservoir where the oil is produced. We're just extracting another mineral from that water to be used for the energy transition. So it's an additional revenue stream, and we're not doing anything new in terms of how they built their infrastructure, how they manage their infrastructure. So we're complementary to the industry, and I see us significantly scaling with the industry to really help solve the North American lithium problem.
Yeah, and especially as demand increases with EV, and I learned the other day talking to Tim about how lithium is used in more than just EV space. There's all the different aspects to be utilizing the lithium. In the months to come, what can you tell our viewers to look forward to from Volt? Are there any milestones that you're on track to complete in 2024? I know you're publicly traded, so there's certain things you can and can't say, but what's in the pipe that you are able to tell us about?
I think what's critical is we're a results-oriented company. And so our plan is we'll let viewers know, we'll let shareholders know that we're getting into the field. We're going to commence lithium production. Our goal is to start selling lithium on a small scale, but start selling from our field operations, and then really start to scale up our program. So I don't look at this field unit as, okay, we're going to do a field unit and then we're going to build a big unit after that. No, we're going to continually scale up. I see an opportunity to constantly grow, constantly scale as we continue to deliver results out in the field.
Awesome. Well, hey, appreciate you taking the time out here today, Alex. I really do. And I look forward to having more conversations as you achieve those milestones.
Really appreciate your time as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. That was Alex Wylie, who is the president, CEO, and director of Volt Lithium. We're going to continue the conversation now with Eric Saderholm, who is the co-founder, managing director of exploration, and director of American Pacific Mining. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I know we might have some tech issues, but we're going to keep rocking because I really do want to hear from you and what you guys are doing. So give us a quick, brief overview of what is it that American Pacific Mining does?
Well, we started out as a silver and gold exploration company in 2018. Upon the acquisition of Madison in Montana, we voluntarily and involuntarily became copper explorers too. And that led to us picking up the Palmer project, Alaska, which is mainly zinc and copper as well. So we've branched into base metal, industrial metals, along with still focusing in Nevada on silver and gold.
Yeah, I know in Alaska, Montana, which you just kind of mentioned, you also have drill programs underneath or underway at both of those. Are there more updates that you can provide on those flagship projects?
Yeah, in Palmer, we're just started up in June drilling a 50-meter exploration program. And we just completed one in Montana. We just did 1,300 in a. So the results are pending, but we look forward to having results, probably early September to release to the market. Initial looks at the core, very encouraging. So you wait on the assays, but we definitely hit what we were hoping to hit.
Yeah. That's always a good outcome. Now, your Palmer VMS project in Alaska is a joint venture partnership with, I believe, Dova Metals Mining. Can you tell me a little bit more about this partnership and the strategic value that it brings to your company for further growth?
Well, I think anytime we get into a JV with any company, and we've been in one with Rio, we've been in Centerra, we've been in with several different larger companies, Oceana. You bring an expertise of that company in, so they can do a lot of the work for you. They develop the project for you. It's a good strategic alliance, and that's what DOA is right now. DOA really wants to process this zinc ore, say in 7 years or so, at their facilities in Japan, and they're not particularly interested in the mining. They just want to get that concentrate shipped across the ocean and get into their processing facilities. So having these strategic partners is always a good thing. If they do decide to leave the project, they leave you with a lot of data and a lot of things that you probably might not have had the money to do.
I think we might have lost you, but I'm gonna ask you a question if you're still there. In a recent interview with our Benzinga reporter Matt Whitaker, you said, and I quote, "Copper is beginning to define its own narrative and is deriving from other base and industrial metal indicators." What do you mean by that when you kind of mentioned that to him?
Well, what I mean by that is it's been traditionally lumped with zinc. It's been lumped with other industrial metals, and they have followed similar paths of the growth or the loss of growth. So they've been on similar curves. When I look at zinc and I look at some of the other metals there, I see 100 years worth of reserves. I don't see that there's going to be a critical pinch point. But I think in 10 or 15 years, copper is going to be in a critical position where there's just not going to be enough supplying for the world to do their electrification and modernization. So I do see that's going to decouple from other base metals.
So then how do we kind of adjust to, if the copper demand is going to be so high that we may not have enough, how do we pivot without going overboard and doing something extreme that could hurt other parts of Earth?
I think the focus has to be somewhat on recycling. I've been a big advocate of that for quite a while. I think with 30% of the copper on the market right now coming from recycled metals, and a lot of that being scrapped, I think the awareness and the education to get that recycling, it's going to be hugely important. Also, permitting is going to have to be eased. We know we have copper mines out there ready to go, but at 20 years to get something going and say $6 or $7 billion, that needs to be eased up, or we're just not going to have enough copper. Simple.
Well, yeah. I remember when I was in science class in middle school, we talked about fossil fuel. and how that could be an issue. I never really thought copper would be one, but it's always interesting to learn. Eric, before I let you go, any final thoughts, anything you want our viewers to know about that we didn't get a chance to cover?
No, not really. I think it's good. I apologize for the technical issues that we're having. That's kind of rare here. Just that we're going to deliver some good results, I think, to the market here shortly. So the good news will come out, I believe, within the next month. We'll have some good news to spread from our two main flagship projects.
Awesome. Well, hey, I look forward to hopefully talking to you after you do release that information. Thank you again, Eric, for your time.
You bet. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. That is Eric Saderholm, who is the co-founder, managing director of exploration and director of American Pacific Mining. All right, we're going to go ahead and continue the conversation. Next up, we've got Gregory, who is the CEO of Alaska Energy. Gregory, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. Glad to be here.
You know, you and I had some good conversations when we did like a prep call, maybe a month ago, I think it was. I'm not quite sure, but I'm interested for the folks to kind of hear your insights. But before we get into that, as always, give us a quick brief overview of what is it that you do at Alaska Energy.
Yeah, sure. Well, our company here in Alaska has discovered a really rather large resource of nickel metal in the ground. Although it's a polymetallic deposit, it has copper and cobalt and platinum and palladium and chromium to go with it. So it's certainly a deposit that has a number of the critical and strategic metals that the United States is keen to secure.
That, you know, it's so, what I'm learning through these conversations is just how critical the U.S. has made minerals and certain aspects of it, whether it's in nickel and copper. But right now, my understanding is that the United States produces very little nickel. So what are some nickel, like where are they kind of located with these nickel mines?
Well, there is only one small nickel mine in the United States. It's a good one in northern Michigan, run by Lundin Mining, but by all reports, it's just about exhausted and is slated for closure within a couple of years. So after that, the U.S. will produce no nickel on its own. And its needs are very significant. We use nickel primarily still for the manufacture of stainless steel. A little bit of nickel and chromium is alloyed with iron to form beautiful stainless steel that we use all over the earth. But now there's a big new use growing in the form of electric vehicle batteries. And that's on top of the myriad other uses in aerospace and defense applications. I mean, it's an amazing metal. It has some really great properties and used all over. But the United States, regardless of the one mine, is 100% dependent on imports because the product of the one mine is shipped to Canada. Canada being a good neighbor, is happy to sell a substantial a part of the nickel that the U.S. imports. But you know, Canada's growing its battery manufacturing capacity. I'm not sure that the country will continue to send all of its nickel to the United States. Recycling was mentioned. We already do a pretty good job in the United States with recycling stainless scrap. But, you know, with a whole new use, that means you need new nickel to come in. And, you know, the reality is that we have to import from countries that are not necessarily so friendly to us. I mean, our demands here are such that even if all the free trade countries that produce nickel sent all their nickel to the United States, it still wouldn't be enough for us. So our demands are pretty strong. And, you know, I feel that the United States is in a very vulnerable position. It's put itself in a vulnerable position by abdicating metal supply chains all over the world. And frankly, sort of driving away its own domestic mining industry by having a very onerous permitting system. I don't think any of us in the industry want permitting regulations relaxed, but what we do want is sideboards on timeline. There's got to be responsive, decisive reviews of our projects, and come with the agency should be coming with a can-do sort of attitude. Let's see if there's a way to approve your project that still protects the environment and people.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen right now.
You've got one spot. It's in Michigan. And of course, we'll see what our Canadian, neighbors end up doing and kind of helping us out there. How does your company, Alaska Energy Metals, then come help solve this problem when we know that, hey, the nickel is going to possibly run out in the U.S. in, say, 2 to 3 years or close enough, and that we're going to need so much more that the world supply may not be enough for us? How are you playing a role in making sure that, your bottom line is impacted in a positive way?
Sure. Well, as mentioned, we've discovered a very large deposit of nickel. With more drilling, I think I know that we can prove it to be substantially larger than it is now.
Yeah.
But the race is on. The metal demands, all metals, is coming fast. And so to calculate the feasibility of extracting this metal at a profit, doing all the necessary background surveys, environmental, current environmental quality documentation, all these things normally takes 5, 6, 7 years, and then you're into the permitting process. So we want to accelerate that timeline if at all possible, so that we have a viable, secure domestic source for use in America.
It's kind of election year, and you mentioned how, hey, the U.S. hasn't exactly helped our situation here. And, just to be clear for the viewers at home as well, at Benzinga, we respect everyone's political beliefs, right? We don't really care for who you vote for. We just want to find the best way to make money no matter what happens with the election. So with that statement out there, are you keeping a close eye on the policies of both candidates to see how it can possibly impact your business and, any regulations that might come down from the government?
Yeah, I'm not really concerned from the standpoint of our business, which way the election goes. The Democrat side has been pushing hard on electrification and, in fact, mandating that we'll all be using electric vehicles and electrifying our society. And if they're going to keep pushing that means metals, and that means a lot of metals. But regardless of that, were the Republicans to be elected, I think it'll continue. It might not be mandated, but our society has realized, well, number one, electric vehicles are quite viable, a lot of fun to drive. And I think any future transition will be consumer driven. And also, we're realizing, wow, yeah, solar energy is a good thing, and wind energy can be acceptable, but we've got to store that energy so it's there when we need it. And that means batteries, and all of that requires tons and tons and tons of metals. So, to me, an expansion into electric energy makes sense. I think for our country, it should be an all of the above approach. We can be completely independent on fossil fuels, but we could actually achieve independency on energy metals as well, and we should strive to do that. And we darn well better make sure that we've got solid supply chains with free trade friendly countries, because we're vulnerable. We could get cut off at any time, and it would be a huge disruption. Maybe not unlike the energy crisis of the 1970s. I was a kid at the time, but man, I knew then myself, even though I wasn't old enough to be a driver yet, that it was a major disruption in our country.
Yeah. Well, hey, I hope it doesn't come to that, no matter what the policies are. Before I let you go, though, any final thoughts from you that you want to share with our viewers?
No, please take a look at our company, Alaska Energy Metals. We're very active drilling right now. Alaska's summer field season is on. And we may be making those discoveries that can really drive our share price up. And, I just think that there's a massive super cycle finally arrived in metals. I've lived through 4 big cycles in my career. This has been a long downturn, so I know there's a big, long upturn coming. And when generalist investors start to roll into metal stocks, things are really going to move. It's going to be a great sector in which to invest.
Awesome. Hey, I appreciate your time, Gregory, and I wish you the best. And I look forward to more conversations with you.
Likewise. Thank you.
You bet. That is Gregory Beischer, who is the Alaska Energy CEO. Check them out. Seems like, whenever you're got something that's in high demand and the supply is kind of running out, you want to find and do diligence on companies that are helping impact those problems. And we hope you enjoyed the conversations that we've had with many of our guests here today. And again, feel free to reach out to them on their IR website, especially Wealth Minerals. We have their link in the chat pinned as well. And we thank you for watching Digging Deeper in the Mining Industry with Benzinga. Till next time.